Look, I need to start by saying something clearly, because apparently everyone in my life has decided I'm the villain in this story. I wasn't attacking him. I was just being honest. Honest. Is that suddenly a crime in a marriage? Can't a wife express her observations anymore without it turning into some dramatic, theatrical production worthy of Broadway? Someone had to say it. The kids clearly got the wrong genes. I mean, you can see it, right? It's not like I made it up out of nowhere or pulled some cruel fiction from thin air. These are just observable facts, measurable realities. My mother noticed it. She mentioned it at least 3 times over the holidays. My sister noticed it and even texted me privately about it. Even our neighbor, sweet Mrs. Chen from next door, commented once when she saw the boys playing in the yard. Though she tried to be polite about it, bless her diplomatic heart. It's not my fault he's sensitive about his family history. I mean, come on. His family is... Well, they're lovely people, don't get me wrong. I'm not a monster. But they're not exactly the genetic lottery winners of the world. His father is 5'6" on a good day with thick-soled shoes. His mother has worn glasses since she was 7 years old. The thick Coke bottle kind that make her eyes look huge. His brother dropped out of community college twice. His sister works retail at 43 years old. These are just facts. Observable, measurable, undeniable facts. My family? My father was a professor. My mother was a nurse practitioner. My brother is a software engineer at a Fortune 500 company. I graduated magna cum laude from a state university. We're tall. Average height in my family is 5'9" for women, 6'1" for men. Perfect vision across the board until age 50 plus. No major health issues. Good teeth. Strong jawlines. The whole package. So when I look at my children and see them struggling with math, squinting at the board, showing signs of being shorter than their peers, displaying stubborn, irrational behavior that certainly doesn't come from my calm, logical side. I mean, what am I supposed to think? Where else would it come from? Seriously, I didn't mean it the way he took it. He twisted everything, like he always does when he's feeling defensive about something. Takes a perfectly reasonable comment, an observation, really, barely even criticism, and spins it into some personal attack on his character, his manhood, his worth as a human being. I've learned to expect it, honestly. He's always been sensitive. Too sensitive, if you ask me. But this time he went too far. Way too far. Besides, and I think this is important context that everyone seems to be ignoring, I'm the one who carries them for 9 months. 9 months. Morning sickness that had me hugging the toilet at 3 a.m. for weeks on end. Back pain so severe I couldn't sleep on my side. Swollen ankles that made my feet look like water balloons. Gestational diabetes with the first one. 37 hours of labor with the second one. A C-section scar that still aches when it rains. I did that. I sacrificed my body, my comfort, my health, my career momentum. I was up for a promotion when I got pregnant the first time, and by the time I came back from maternity leave, Jennifer had my job. Jennifer, who can't even format a decent PowerPoint presentation. So yes, I'm allowed to vent occasionally about the outcome. That's not unreasonable. That's not cruel. That's called being human. That's called having earned the right to express frustration when things don't turn out the way you hoped. I said all this, well, some of this, the parts that make me look better, while holding a manila envelope he threw at me 10 minutes earlier. Actually, threw is too strong a word. He tossed it, dramatically. It slid across the kitchen table and knocked over my coffee mug. Thank God it was empty, and landed right in front of me with a slap that was clearly meant to be intimidating. The words on it were printed in cold, clinical letters. DNA results, read them. My first thought was that he'd done one of those ancestry tests. You know, the ones that tell you you're 23% Irish or whatever. I almost rolled my eyes. We don't need to pay $99 to confirm what we already know about our backgrounds. But when I picked it up and really looked at the label, I saw it wasn't an ancestry test, it was a paternity test. My hand started shaking before my brain fully processed what that meant. But even now, sitting here with this envelope burning a hole in my lap, the papers scattered across the coffee table like evidence at a crime scene, I need to make something crystal clear. I didn't do anything wrong. He completely, utterly, dramatically overreacted to a few simple comments. This whole situation, this whole nightmare, it's on him, not me. I was just being honest. Isn't that what they tell you to do in marriage? Be honest, communicate, don't bottle things up. Well, I communicated, and look where it got me. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. Let me take you back to exactly how this unfolded, because you need the full context to understand why his reaction was so completely ridiculous and out of proportion to what actually happened. It was a Thursday evening. I remember, because Thursday is when I usually meal prep for the weekend, and I was in the kitchen with my cutting board and my good knife, chopping vegetables for a stir-fry, thinking about absolutely nothing except whether we had enough soy sauce in the pantry. The boys were upstairs doing homework. Or they were supposed to be doing homework. More likely, they were on their tablets watching YouTube videos about Minecraft or whatever it is kids watch these days. I'd check on them later. I was tired. I'd been tired for weeks, actually. Work had been insane. The kids had been demanding. The house was always a mess no matter how much I cleaned. And my husband had been distant and weird for at least 3 weeks straight. I'd asked him about it. Are you okay? You seem off. He'd just shrugged and said he was fine. Work was stressful, nothing to worry about. Men. They never want to talk about their feelings until suddenly they explode over nothing. He walked into the kitchen at 6:47 p.m. I remember the time because I glanced at the oven clock, calculating how long until dinner would be ready, wondering if I had time to start the rice. He had this tight jaw. You know the look, when men are trying to seem intimidating or serious, but really, they just look constipated and kind of ridiculous. And he had an envelope in his hand, a manila envelope, the kind that immediately looks official and vaguely threatening. He dropped it on the table, not placed it gently, not set it down, dropped it. Hard. So hard it actually bounced a little and knocked over the pepper shaker. Black pepper spilled across the white table like ash. I remember thinking how childish that was. This aggressive little gesture clearly meant to startle me, to make me pay attention to him. I didn't even look up from my cutting board right away. I was in the middle of dicing an onion, and I didn't want to lose my rhythm. "What's that supposed to be?" I said, still chopping. "Your dramatic exit? Are you leaving me? Should I call a lawyer?" I said it with a little laugh, trying to lighten the mood with humor like I always do. Because honestly, he'd been sulking for weeks, and I was getting really tired of walking on eggshells around him, monitoring every word I said, constantly wondering what would set him off next. "No." His voice was flat, cold, like a stranger's voice. "Just the truth you said you wanted." That made me pause. I looked up, onion tears making my eyes sting, and saw him standing there with his arms crossed. His face was completely blank, not angry, not sad, just empty. He pushed the envelope toward me across the table. It slid through the spilled pepper, leaving a little trail. "Open it." "I'm making dinner," I said, annoyed now. "Can this wait? The kids need to eat by 7:30 or they'll be impossible to put down." "Open." "It." I rolled my eyes. I actually rolled them. I'm not proud of it now, but in the moment I was genuinely exasperated. This theatrical display was getting old. I thought maybe he'd printed out our credit card statements to prove I spend too much on groceries. Or maybe it was a work evaluation that didn't go well and he was taking it out on me. Or maybe it was something about his mother. She'd been making passive-aggressive comments about our parenting lately, and maybe he'd finally decided to address it. I wiped my hands on my apron, picked up the envelope, and saw the label. Genetic Testing Laboratories, Paternity Test Results, Confidential. The kitchen tilted, actually tilted, like the floor had become the wall and the wall had become the ceiling, and nothing was where it was supposed to be. My smirk died on my face. My throat went dry. My hands went cold. Everything in the kitchen seemed to get very, very quiet, like all the sound had been sucked out through a vacuum. I couldn't hear the refrigerator humming. Couldn't hear the kids upstairs. Couldn't hear the traffic outside. Just my own heartbeat, suddenly very loud in my ears. "What?" My voice came out as a whisper. "What is this?" he said quietly, and I'll never forget the way his voice sounded, flat, emotionless, like a stranger reading a script. "You blame my genetics for everything, every flaw in our children, every struggle, every imperfection. You've spent years telling me how inferior my family is, how weak my genes are, how much damage I've done to our children just by being their father." I opened my mouth, nothing came out, so let's make sure they're actually mine. The envelope slipped from my fingers and hit the table. "You're insane," I whispered. "Am I?" He tilted his head slightly, like he was genuinely considering the question. "You spent the last 3 years systematically blaming my genetics for every problem our children face. Their height, their eyesight, their grades, their behavior, their teeth, their coordination, everything. So I thought, maybe you're right. Maybe my genes are so terrible, so inferior, so damaging, that these perfect children couldn't possibly be mine. Maybe there's someone else, someone from your superior genetic line." "I never—" "Open it," he said again. "No. Open it. This is ridiculous. Of course they're yours. I've never cheated on you. I've never even looked at another man. How dare you accuse me of—" "Then it won't matter what the results say." His voice was so calm, so reasonable, like he was discussing the weather. "If you've never cheated, if they're definitely mine, then you have nothing to worry about. Open it and prove me wrong. Prove that my inferior genetics really did create those children." I stared at him. I literally couldn't speak. For the first time in our entire marriage, I had absolutely no words. My mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, and somewhere deep inside, beneath all my indignation and shock and outrage, a tiny voice whispered, "You did this. You drove him to this. This is your fault." But I pushed that voice down, way down, because I had to be right. I always had to be right. If I wasn't right, then what did that make me? Okay, let me explain this properly to the audience, to you, because clearly nobody in my actual life wants to hear my side of things. Everyone's acting like I'm some kind of monster, some cruel villain who deserves this humiliation, when really, I was just making observations. Scientific observations, based on facts, based on genetics, based on reality. I just said the kid's got his stubbornness. That's all. That's literally all I said initially. Well, okay, maybe I mentioned his height once or twice, but that was relevant. Our oldest is in the 20th percentile for height. 20th. Do you know what that means? It means 80% of his peers are taller than him. And when I look at my family, all tall, all naturally athletic, and then look at my husband's family, all short, all kind of dumpy, the connection is obvious. It's not mean, it's just math. And, okay, yes, his bad eyesight came up because our son needs glasses now, and it's clearly from his side. My whole family has perfect vision until at least age 60. My grandmother was still driving without glasses at 78. My father didn't need reading glasses until he was 65. Perfect vision is a family trait we're proud of. So, when our 7-year-old starts squinting at the board and the optometrist says he needs a pretty strong prescription, what am I supposed to think? Where else would that come from? It's certainly not from my side. And maybe, possibly, I mentioned his temper a few times when the boys were acting out, because they do have tempers. Our youngest threw a plate at the wall last week. A plate. That kind of explosive, irrational anger doesn't come from my side. I'm calm, logical. I think before I act. That's definitely from his side. His father used to throw things too, according to stories his mother told me before she decided to hate me. But I was joking. Mostly joking. Using humor to cope with the stress of parenting. Don't all parents do that? Make little jokes about whose fault certain traits are. Look, every mother compares traits. Every single one. It's what we do. We carry these children, we birth them, we raise them, and yes, we notice where certain features come from. That's normal human behavior. That's pattern recognition. That's basic genetics. Why am I being crucified for being observant and scientifically minded? What I conveniently left out when explaining this to my mother-in-law, who, by the way, immediately took his side without even hearing my full story, without even considering that maybe her precious son is being oversensitive and manipulative, were a few tiny details. Minor things, really. Context that might have sounded bad, but really wasn't. The part where I said, I hope they don't end up short like you, when we were looking at the boys' growth charts at the pediatrician's office. But I said it quietly, and it was a legitimate concern. Short men face discrimination in the workplace. Studies prove it. I was expressing a valid worry about our children's future earning potential. The part where I complained to my mother about his weak genes over brunch last month, but that was a private conversation. Between mother and daughter, we're allowed to vent to each other. That's what mothers and daughters do. And my mother agreed with me. She's the one who brought up how much taller and smarter my father's family was compared to average. The part where I blamed him because our son needed braces. Your family's teeth are terrible. This is going to cost us thousands. But again, it's true. His mother has dentures. His father had dentures by age 55. His brother's teeth are crooked as a country road. Braces cost $6,000. That's a vacation we can't take now because of genetic factors I had no control over. The part where I told him, during an argument about the boys' report cards, my side of the family is stronger anyway. But I said that in anger, in the heat of the moment. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. That's normal. That's human. Why is he holding on to one comment from 6 months ago, like it's some kind of evidence against me? But see, context matters. I said these things in private, or mostly private, and they were based on facts. Observable, measurable, undeniable facts. His family does have bad teeth. That's not an insult. That's dental history. His family is shorter than average. That's not cruelty. That's anthropometry. His family didn't value education the same way mine did. That's not elitism. That's just cultural differences. I insist, even now, even with that goddamn envelope staring at me from the coffee table. Every mom says things like that. It's normal. Is it my fault he can't handle a little constructive criticism? Is it my fault he's so sensitive that he takes every single comment as a personal attack on his manhood, or his family, or whatever Freudian complex he's nursing? Is it my fault that he can't differentiate between honest observation and cruel attack? I mean, come on. I was just being practical. Someone has to think about these things. Someone has to consider the genetic implications when raising children. Someone has to plan for the challenges ahead. I was being responsible. I was being realistic. I was being a good mother by acknowledging potential issues before they became serious problems. But apparently, according to him and his family, and even some of my own friends who've gone mysteriously quiet in the group chat lately, I was being cruel. Cruel? Can you believe that? Cruel is hitting your kids. Cruel is starving them. Cruel is neglecting them. Cruel is not pointing out genetic realities backed by science and observable evidence. But nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to acknowledge that I might have a point. They all just want to paint me as the villain because he played the victim so well, because he manufactured this whole dramatic DNA test situation to make me look like the bad guy. Well, I'm not the bad guy. I'm just the only one brave enough to tell the truth. And the truth is, our kids did get his genetics, and some of those genetics are objectively less advantageous than others. That's not cruelty. That's just reality. I'm trying to remember when it started, when my observations began, because they're all acting like this was some sustained campaign of abuse spanning years. But really, I was just talking, expressing myself, being honest in my marriage like all the relationship books and therapists say you should be. Communication is key, right? Don't bottle things up. Share your feelings. Well, I shared my feelings, and look where it got me. There was the dinner incident. We were eating pasta. I remember because our oldest spilled marinara sauce on his new shirt, and I was already annoyed because I'd just bought that shirt and told him specifically to be careful, when our youngest proudly announced he'd gotten his math test back. "What did you get?" my husband asked, smiling encouragingly. "C-," our son chirped, like this was an achievement. My husband's smile faltered slightly. "Well, we can work on that. Math is hard. I struggled with math too." And that's when I said it. I didn't even think about it. The words just came out. Well, clearly the boys didn't inherit my family's brains. I said it with a little laugh. A joke, to lighten the mood. Because the alternative was snapping at my son for being content with a C-, and I was trying to be better about not criticizing the kids directly. But the table went quiet. My husband stopped eating. He went very still, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth, a strand of spaghetti dangling pathetically. "What did you just say?" he asked quietly. "I said they didn't get my family's brains. My brother was valedictorian. I graduated magna cum laude. A C- in third-grade math is concerning. They're 8 years old." "Exactly. Third-grade math, addition and subtraction. This should be easy." "Not everyone finds academics easy." His voice was tight now, controlled. "That doesn't mean they're stupid." "I didn't say they were stupid. I just said they didn't inherit my family's natural academic ability. That's just observation." "Why are you being so sensitive?" He put his fork down, carefully, precisely, like he was afraid if he moved too quickly he'd throw it. "I'm going to check on something upstairs," he said, and he left, just stood up and walked out of the kitchen, leaving his plate half full, leaving me sitting there with 2 confused children and a growing sense that maybe I'd said something wrong. But I pushed that feeling away. He was overreacting, being too sensitive. I was just stating facts. Then there was school orientation. Oh God, school orientation. This was worse. This was public. It was open house at the elementary school, one of those nights where you meet the teachers and see the classroom and pretend to be interested in finger paintings and spelling tests. We were sitting in tiny plastic chairs designed for 7-year-olds, our knees practically up to our chins, listening to Mrs. Patterson explain her classroom management philosophy. She was going through the list of students, making little comments about each one. When she got to our youngest, she paused. "Now, he's a sweet boy," she started, and I immediately knew there was a but coming. "But he can be disruptive during quiet reading time. He has trouble sitting still, staying focused. We're working on it." I felt my face get hot. Every other parent in the room was looking at us, looking at me, judging me, thinking I was a bad mother who couldn't control my child. So I laughed. I forced out a laugh and said, "Sorry, he acts like his father sometimes." I thought it would be funny, self-deprecating, relatable. Other parents would laugh too, share their own struggles with hyperactive kids. But nobody laughed. Mrs. Patterson gave me this weird look, concerned, almost pitying. My husband stood up, just stood up in the middle of the teacher's sentence, and walked out of the classroom. All the other parents watched him go. The whole room was silent except for the buzz of the fluorescent lights. "Sorry," I said quickly, smiling too brightly. He's not feeling well. Stomach thing. You know how it is. Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly, but she didn't believe me. I could tell. I sat through the rest of open house alone, pretending everything was fine, while internally screaming at my husband for embarrassing me like that, for making a scene, for proving my point about his lack of impulse control. When I got to the car, he was sitting in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead. "That was rude," I said as I buckled my seatbelt. "Rude?" He turned to look at me, and his eyes were cold. "You just blamed our son's behavior on me in front of his teacher, his classmates' parents, everyone. You threw me under the bus to save face. And I'm the one being rude. I was making a joke. Everyone knows kids act like their parents sometimes. Why do you have to take everything so personally?" He started the car without answering. Drove home in complete silence. I tried to fill the quiet with chatter about the classroom setup, the other parents, anything. He didn't respond once. That should have been a warning sign. That silence, that coldness. But I told myself he was just being moody. He'd get over it. He always did. Except this time, he wasn't getting over it. He was planning something I never saw coming. But the real moment I remember, the one that makes me squirm even now, though I'll never admit it out loud, though I'll take it to my grave before I confess it was wrong, was the family gathering. His whole family was there. His parents, his siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole extended clan gathered at some Italian restaurant with too many forks at each place, setting and portions too small for the price. We were celebrating his mother's 65th birthday. I'd had 2 glasses of wine, maybe 3, possibly 4. The server kept refilling, and I wasn't paying attention because I was busy making small talk with his cousin about her new house, which was in a questionable neighborhood, but I was being polite about it. Someone, I think it was his aunt, mentioned how the boys looked like a perfect blend of both of us, how you could see features from both families, how genetics was such a fascinating thing. And I laughed. I actually laughed, like this was the funniest thing I'd ever heard, and said, "My genes worked over time. His, not so much." The table went silent, completely, utterly, devastatingly silent. Forks stopped moving. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the restaurant seemed to get quieter around us, like the universe itself was holding its breath at what I'd just said. His mother's fork froze halfway to her mouth, a piece of chicken dangling from it. His sister stared at me like I'd just announced I was secretly a Russian spy. His father, his jovial, always laughing father, who finds humor in everything, looked down at his plate with an expression I'd never seen before. Shame, second-hand embarrassment. His brother coughed awkwardly. His cousin suddenly became very interested in her napkin. My husband didn't say anything. He just took a long, slow drink of water, like he needed time to process what had just happened. Then he carefully set down his glass, placed his napkin on the table, and said, "Excuse me, I need some air." And he walked out of the restaurant, into the parking lot. He was gone for 20 minutes. His mother looked at me with tears in her eyes. Actually tears. "How could you say something like that?" "It was a joke," I said weakly. "I didn't mean—" "You humiliated him, in front of his entire family, on my birthday. I was just—" But she turned away from me, literally turned her back to me and started talking to her daughter about dessert options like I didn't exist. The rest of the dinner was excruciating. Nobody spoke to me. They all made polite conversation around me, through me, without acknowledging my presence. I was a ghost at that table. When my husband finally came back, his eyes were red. Not crying red, but cold red, angry red. We drove home in silence. "Your family is too sensitive," I said when we pulled into the garage. He turned off the car, sat there with his hands on the steering wheel for a long moment. Then he said, very quietly, "No, you're too cruel." And he went inside without me. I should have apologized. Right then, I should have chased him inside and apologized and meant it. Instead, I sat in the car for 10 more minutes, scrolling through my phone, convincing myself that everyone was overreacting, that I was the victim here, that they were all too sensitive and couldn't take a joke. Looking back now, that was the moment. That was when he started planning this. The DNA test, the revenge, the proof. That was when I broke something that couldn't be fixed with words alone. But I didn't know it yet. I thought I could just move forward, pretend it hadn't happened, wait for everyone to forget. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was especially wrong about that. It happened on a Wednesday night. I remember because Wednesday is supposed to be my yoga night, my self-care night, the one evening a week I get to do something for myself. But I'd skipped class because I was too exhausted, completely drained, running on fumes and spite. The boys had been fighting all morning before school. I mean really fighting, hitting each other, breaking toys, screaming about whose turn it was on the iPad. I'd burned breakfast because I was trying to answer work emails while cooking. The coffee maker broke. The dog threw up on the carpet. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. Work had been hell. My boss criticized a presentation I'd spent 2 weeks preparing. My coworker, Janet, useless Janet who delegates all her actual work, got credit for a project I did most of the heavy lifting on. My computer crashed twice. I missed lunch. By the time 5 p.m. rolled around, I was ready to scream. My husband came home late from work, again. He's always late, always has some excuse about traffic or a meeting, running long or helping a coworker with something. I was already in a mood, a bad, ugly, resentful mood. He walked in looking tired, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped like he was carrying invisible weight. That worn-out expression he gets when he's been dealing with his insufferable boss all day. Part of me felt bad for him. A small part, a tiny part, way down deep that I immediately ignored. The bigger part was just angry. Angry that he wasn't there to help with the chaos of the evening. Angry that I had to handle bedtime alone again. Angry that he got to have a job where he left work at work while I juggled career and kids and household management and everything else. The boys have been nightmares today, I said before he'd even set down his briefcase. Absolute nightmares. And they got their progress reports. It's not good. He sighed, set down his briefcase, loosened his tie. How bad? Bad. Math is still terrible. Both of them are barely passing. Science isn't much better. They're struggling in reading comprehension. And one of them, I can't even remember which one now, they blend together when they're both being difficult, got a note from the teacher about attitude problems and defiance. He rubbed his face with both hands, like he could physically wipe away the stress. Okay, we'll work on it. We'll get them tutors if we need to. We'll set up a better homework routine. We'll talk to the teachers. We'll figure it out. Will we? I heard myself say. Because you're never here. I'm the one dealing with homework meltdowns every night. I'm the one emailing teachers. I'm the one at every parent-teacher conference while you're stuck at work. So when you say we'll figure it out, what you mean is, I'll figure it out. Again. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you're right, I'm sorry. I'll make more time. I'll adjust my schedule. And that should have been enough. That should have satisfied me. He acknowledged it. He apologized. He offered a solution. But it wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough when I was in this mood. You know what I think? I said, my voice getting sharper. I think the problem isn't just time. I think the problem is deeper than that. What do you mean? And that's when I said it. The thing I'd been thinking for years but never quite articulated. The thing that had been building in my mind like pressure in a volcano, waiting for the right moment to explode. Honestly, if the kids struggle later in life, if they don't get into good colleges, if they end up in dead-end jobs, if they can't succeed academically or professionally, it'll be because of your genes, not mine. The words hung in the air like poison gas. He froze, completely froze. His hands were still on his face, and for a long moment he didn't move at all. Didn't breathe, didn't react. Just stood there like a statue, like someone had pressed pause on his life. Then he slowly lowered his hands and looked at me. His expression was blank, empty, like I was looking at a stranger wearing my husband's face. Not angry, not hurt, not defensive, just gone. Like something essential had left his body and all that remained was a shell. "What did you just say?" His voice was barely a whisper. I said, "No, I heard you. I just want to make sure I heard correctly. You said if our children struggle in life, it will be my fault, because of my genetics, because of who I am, because I'm their father." "That's not what That's exactly what you said." He was still staring at me with those dead eyes, those stranger's eyes. "You've been thinking this for a while, haven't you? This isn't something that just occurred to you. You've been blaming me, my family, my DNA, my very existence, for every perceived flaw in our children. And now you're blaming me for their entire future too. I didn't mean it like..." "How did you mean it?" I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out, because the truth, the ugly, horrible truth, was that I had meant it exactly like that. In that moment of exhaustion and frustration and resentment, I had meant every single word. I believed it. I believed our children's struggles were his fault. I believed my genetics were superior. I believed he had contaminated our perfect genetic potential with his inferior contribution. And he could see it on my face. The truth, the belief, the certainty. He nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he'd suspected for a long time. Then he turned and walked out of the room with no expression on his face whatsoever. I heard the bedroom door close, then the click of the lock. I stood in the kitchen, my heart pounding, my hands shaking, and I thought, he's just sulking. He'll get over it. He always does. By tomorrow morning, this will be forgotten. But this time was different. This time, I'd gone too far. This time, I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. This time, I'd told him that our children, our beautiful, frustrating, complicated children, were fundamentally flawed because of him. Because of who he was, because he wasn't good enough. I'd told him he'd ruined them just by being their father. And I'd meant it. In that moment, I'd absolutely meant it. I still thought I was right. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to look, I knew I'd broken something that couldn't be fixed. For 3 weeks after that night, something fundamental changed in our marriage, in our household, in the very atmosphere of our home. He didn't yell. He didn't give me the silent treatment in that aggressive, punishing way some men do when they're angry. He didn't slam doors or break things or make passive-aggressive comments or turn our friends against me or do any of the toxic behaviors you read about in relationship advice columns. No. What he did was worse. So much worse. He became polite. Perfectly, coldly, devastatingly polite. Like I was a colleague he had to maintain professional relations with, not his wife of 11 years. Every morning, "Good morning, did you sleep well?" Every dinner, "This is lovely, thank you for cooking." Every evening, "I'll handle the dishes, you relax." Every night, a kiss on the cheek, chaste, brief, obligatory, before turning over and going to sleep with his back to me. It was like living with a well-programmed robot, someone who shared my house and my children, but not my life. Someone who had checked out emotionally, but was still performing all the necessary functions of husband and father with mechanical precision. He asked about my day, but didn't really listen to the answers. I could tell by the way his eyes glazed over, by the way he nodded at appropriate intervals without actually engaging. He helped with homework every night, sitting at the kitchen table with each boy for exactly 45 minutes, explaining math problems with infinite patience I never knew he had. He read bedtime stories in silly voices that made the kids giggle. He attended every soccer game, every school performance, every parent event, standing on the sidelines or sitting in the audience with a smile that never reached his eyes. But the warmth was gone. The intimacy was gone. The partnership was gone. I told myself he was just adjusting, processing his feelings like the therapist we'd seen years ago during a rough patch had recommended, working through things in his own time. I thought, he'll come around eventually. He always does. We've survived fights before. This is just another bump in the road. He's probably just stressed about work, I told my sister on the phone. Men get weird when they're stressed. They withdraw. She said non-committally. He's actually been really good with the kids lately. Very engaged. More present than usual. That's good, she said, but her tone was strange. Cautious. Yesterday he took them to the park for 3 hours. Just came back exhausted but happy. It was nice. Silence on the other end. What? I demanded. Nothing. Be careful. Careful of what? Never mind. I'm probably wrong. But she wasn't wrong. She saw something I didn't want to see, because I didn't notice him taking the kids to the clinic on that Tuesday afternoon when I thought they were at the park. The clinic visit I only learned about later, too late, when everything came crashing down. I didn't notice him printing documents in the middle of the night when I was asleep. The soft whir of the printer in his home office, barely audible through our bedroom wall. I didn't notice him speaking quietly on the phone, in the garage with the door closed, his voice low and serious, saying things like, yes, both children, and how long for results, and completely confidential. I didn't notice him collecting records, birth certificates, old photos, medical files, school documents, organizing them in a folder he kept in his car where I'd never think to look. I saw what I wanted to see, a husband who was helping more, who was being responsible, who was stepping up as a father, who was finally prioritizing the kids. See, I told my mother during our weekly phone call. I think that conversation we had actually lit a fire under him, made him realize he needs to be more involved. Sometimes men need a wake-up call, a little harsh truth to motivate them. My mother made a non-committal sound. She'd been making a lot of those sounds lately. I chalked it up to her getting older, becoming less opinionated. He took them for ice cream yesterday, on a Tuesday, completely spontaneous. He never does stuff like that. That's nice. I know, right? Maybe tough love is what he needed all along. Maybe I was being too gentle before, not speaking my truth clearly enough. More silence. Mum? Honey, I'm just going to say this because I love you. Be careful. When men get very quiet and very accommodating after a big fight, they're usually planning something. I laughed. Planning what? He's not some criminal mastermind. He's just finally being a better father. But my mother was right. Mothers usually are. Because he wasn't just bonding with the children. He wasn't just being a good father. He wasn't just taking them for ice cream and park visits and special outings. He was collecting evidence, samples, proof. He was building a case for the one question that had been growing in his mind like a cancer, ever since I told him his genetics were the problem, ever since I blamed him for every flaw in our children, ever since I made him feel like a genetic contaminant. If my genes are so terrible, so inferior, so damaging, are these children even mine? And I had no idea. None. I was completely blindsided. Because I was so convinced I was right that I never considered I might be wrong. I was so focused on his faults that I never examined my own. I was so certain he'd get over it that I never considered he might not. And that arrogance, that absolute certainty in my own righteousness, is what allowed him to plan his revenge in plain sight, while I congratulated myself on finally getting through to him. 3 weeks of polite distance, 3 weeks of careful documentation, 3 weeks of preparing the bombshell that would destroy everything, and I never saw it coming. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was on FaceTime with my mother, sprawled on the couch, ranting about his family's terrible genetics. Diabetes, heart problems, cholesterol. According to me, everything our boy struggled with came from his side. I was mid-complaint when he walked in holding an envelope. I waved him off. "Can it wait?" He didn't move. I hung up on my mum, and he placed the envelope on the table, carefully, like a legal document. The label froze my blood. Genetic Testing Laboratories, Paternity Results. He sat across from me, calm in a way that felt dangerous. "You've spent years blaming my genetics for everything wrong with our kids," he said. "So I wondered, if I'm so inferior, maybe I'm not even their father." I exploded. "Are you insane?" But he stayed level. "If you never cheated, then the results won't matter. Open it." My hand shook as I tore it open. 99.99% probability of paternity. Confirmed father of both children. I broke down, not because I doubted the results, but because I finally understood what I'd done. I'd mocked him so relentlessly, so casually for so long, that he questioned his own children. He'd swabbed their cheeks, paid for tests, waited in torment, all because of me. "They're yours," I sobbed. "I know," he said quietly. "I always knew." My crying stopped. "Then why?" "Because I needed you to feel what you made me feel, to understand the damage." He stood. "I'm sleeping on the couch. Tomorrow at 2, we're starting marriage counseling. Dr. Morrison." "We're not in crisis," I whispered. He looked at me, tired, hurt, emptied out. "Aren't we?" Then he walked out, leaving me alone with the test results scattered like evidence. Evidence of what my words had done. Evidence that I'd broken something we might never get back.